Welcome to Class 3. We're going to review Think, Feel, Act, the research document that you've been introduced to earlier in the program. In this Reflective Practitioner course, we're going to look at Think, Feel, Act from a little bit different lens, and you will be completing a paper around that. So this PowerPoint is just going to do a high-level overview of this idea of professional learning and how to extend knowledge by reading research. One of the things that this course is about, as you know, it's called the Reflective Practitioner, is this idea of reflection. And this slide looks at the taxonomy of reflection and how reflection works. And there are three elements that stand out that I want you to think about. And they are, what could I use this again for? Why or what was important about this? And do I see patterns in what I did? And so how this relates to Think, Feel, Act is I'm going to ask you to dig deeper into one of the topics based on your knowledge, based on your interest, based on this idea of wanting maybe to dig deeper, and to explore why that skill is important as an early child educator. So these elements of reflective thinking make sense in that context. Where could I use this again? Why or what is important about this topic? And do I see patterns in what I did or patterns in your interest in exploring other knowledge? So when we reflect, there are lots of times we do this reflection. And I think for most people, the element that comes up when we say, do you have time for reflective practice as an early child educator? Often this idea that there isn't time to do it. And so one of the things that we're trying to create in having this course, the Reflective Practitioner, and the focus in your last seminar course on reflective practice, and I know in many of your courses you're asked to write reflections or to reflect on something, is that it becomes a disposition that we then just lean into. So are you the kind of person who likes to reflect immediately after the experience? Do you do it at the end of the day? You know, maybe you're driving home, maybe you're on the bus. Is that a time when you go through things that have happened? Do you have time during your planning time in the day when you have, we've actually built in reflective practice time in your placement. We give you and expect that you have 30 minutes for that. Again, we're trying to create this disposition. And for some of us, this disposition is natural. And for others, we have to spend time on it. First thing, do you wake up in the morning and like to reflect and consider what's happening? Maybe it's, you decide that one day a week you're going to do it during your lunch period. So again, this idea that time and reflective practice often collide is something that we want you to spend time thinking about and how you will embed reflective practice in your role as an early child educator. And one of the reasons we want you to consider this is we want to see you to be able to value reflective practice as a disposition that is exemplary, that is best practice, that is something that if you can lean into this practice, you're going to be better at the work that you do. And so again, it builds this idea of always learning, because reflective practice is really about thinking about why something happened and that cycle of learning from it. So here's a little graphic that shows things that we can do. So, reflection and being a learner means that we think about our thinking. So we don't want you to take thinking for granted. That you sometimes make notes about your learning or your thinking. That you actually acknowledge the learning process. And I think this is really, really hard for many of us. we talk about process over product, but we're not, we haven't experienced that often as a learner. You know, you make a record of your learning artifacts. I mean, we're asking you to do that by creating your portfolio. And we know as an early child educator, you're going to continue to keep a record of your learning as a requirement of the College of ECE. The other thing you're going to do is build this idea of self-evaluation and reflection as part of that learning process. So this slide for me just helps to reinforce the need for being a reflective practitioner. I have gave you a link to the actual document here, and Think, Feel, Act has been around, I think, since 2013. So we're already 8 years into this document being available. And one of the reasons why we have you do this paper in this course is really to take advantage of the fact that, you know, in the age of the internet, we don't have to make up knowledge. The knowledge and the information is there. We just have to know where to seek it. So knowing that this Think, Feel, Act document exists is a resource to you. And this paper and what I'm going to ask you to do around this topic will help you see the learning element in reading research and diving deeper into topics that are of interest. There's a YouTube video here that you can have a look at. And this video actually it's the link to the Think, Feel, Act YouTube channel. So what I know for a fact is that you are familiar with the Think, Feel, Act document, but you may not be familiar with the fact that there are videos that also highlight these topics. And so one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to explore those YouTube videos and also use that as part of your paper and your research. One of the things that I've talked about is the role of learning and reflective practice as outlined by the College of ECE, and this idea that you are going to be asked to do continuous professional learning, and what does that continuous professional learning look like? And a lot of it is around finding topics that are interesting to you and then exploring those topics. So reflective practice and journaling is one of those ways that is considered a learning process, that is considered additional learning as an early child educator. Often we think of learning as workshops, face-to-face, and we know now in the era that we're in, a lot of this is done online, and there are lots of opportunities to read a Think, Feel, Act research paper, watch a YouTube video, and then document your thinking process around that. And so I wanted to show you that there are many ways of being reflective. There are many ways of learning, and writing and journaling is one of those ways. Reading research papers is one of those ways. The other thing that I like about this slide is also to highlight the fact that being a reflective practitioner doesn't always mean that you have to read a paper and reflect on it, and that there are lots of ways that you can reflect. You can start a blog, and many of you know that there are lots and lots of early childhood related blogs. Some are more research related or have depth. Others are more reflective and sharing ideas. So by reviewing this slide, you can see that there are many things that we can do to be a reflective practitioner. And I want you to think about that in terms of your continuous professional learning. In your first 2 years as an early child educator, you're going to go through that continuous professional learning process. And so, you know, are you going to set up chats with colleagues and really dig deep into topics? And so one of the things that this course is hopefully going to help you see is the value of reflective practice, also that maybe the ease of reflective practice, and in fact that it doesn't have to be outside of the realm of your day-to-day work, but it needs to be intentional. There is also another link called Edutopia. I'm just going to go back. It skipped over there. Sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. Edutopia. This is a great website that has a lot of education related information. And this is just one example of professional learning on your own and how to create that professional learning. The next slide we'll come back to in a minute. I'm going to ask that you engage in some small conversations. Here are some characteristics of a reflective educator. They ask themselves questions. They consider the child's perspective. They are eager to gain more experience. They look for details. They examine the environments. They become fully engaged in their work. And this is taken directly out of the textbook, Reflecting in Communities of Practice. So going back to this self-assessment and learning plan, this is something that I'm going to ask that you do individually. And then I've set up a group area for you to go in and spend some time chatting about having a little difficulty with my buttons here, chatting about the document. Now you'll notice we're not going to include all of the elements of the document. I've taken out the environment as a third teacher and the other one related to social emotional learning, because I know that you've spent a lot of time on those topics already. So you'll be limited to 4 topics from this document. Again, you have a Word document in the content that you can actually type in and spend some time thinking about. And this activity is going to help you look at what those areas are about and where is your interest. Where did you stop and say, you know what, I know we talked about inclusion, but I'm still really interested in that. Or I know we talked about pedagogical leadership, but I need to, I'm curious about that topic, and I'm going to watch the YouTube videos, reread that article, and you're going to write your paper on that. So I've created this assignment for you to choose a topic that's not new, but that you want to delve deeper into and really explore more. So that's this week's content, and I give you extra time to take that time to think about the document, share in the groups. I've given you a few websites here, actually blogs, that you might want to research more, and hopefully you'll find this experience of delving deeper into a topic, again, is a reflective process. And so what I'm hoping in this course is to actually not just talk about reflective practice, but have you doing reflective practice. So enjoy the document, and I look forward to reading your papers.